Hello everyone, my name is Cindy Chung and this is my visual presentation for part A of my language community assignment. For this presentation, I'm first going to describe my social identities. Next, I'll talk about the language repertoires that I have. I will also talk about the speech communities that I feel I belong to, and I'm going to describe the social networks that I am in frequent contact with, which are mainly my workmates and my family. Right. This graphic right here represents my social identities. I'm just going to move the camera down. There is a lot here, as you can see, but in my assignment, I'm going to focus on my identity as an English teacher in the CISWE program. That's Certificate in Spoken and Written English, as well as my identity as the youngest and only daughter in a Chinese-Indonesian family of 6 people. As far as my linguistic repertoire is concerned, I am using the definition that is found in the unit reading. Okay, and going by this definition, my linguistic repertoire includes English, and I am also a native speaker of Indonesian, so I'm fluent in that as well. I also have some knowledge of Japanese. From time to time, like when I visit Singapore to see some of my family members and when I talk to my colleagues during break times, I do use Singlish. Okay, and it can be interpreted, I suppose, as a form of speech accommodation on my part, because I don't use Singlish whenever I am speaking with everyday Australian people, for example. I only use it for my colleagues who actually come from Malaysia and Singapore. Speech communities. Again, when I was looking for a definition for speech communities, I have found that there's a whole different definitions by different social linguists. But for myself, I'm going by the definition by Fishman here. Okay, and a speech community for him is a type of community where the members share at least a single speech variety and the norms for its appropriate use. With this in mind, I consider myself to belong to the English teachers' speech community because we all speak standard English and we share the belief of how English and what types of English should be taught to our students. Coincidentally, this makes my workplace speech community also my community of practice because that's defined as a group of people who share the same goals, values, and roles. I also belong to the English-speaking Chinese-Indonesian community here in Perth because I can use standard or vernacular English, depending who I'm talking to. At home, I tend to use vernacular English with a mixture of Indonesian if I'm speaking to my family members. This happens if I'm face-to-face or if I'm chatting to them via WhatsApp. This graphic right here represents my workplace community. And this social network is very dense and multiplex because all of us have been in the same workplace for a number of years, so we know each other quite well. It's multiplex also because outside of work we do keep in touch via WhatsApp messages, and from time to time we go out for social outings like birthdays, morning teas, and so on. I have also coded the relationship in my workplace based on how often I keep in touch with them. You can see for yourself here in the corner, the thickest lines represent the people that I have most contact with. I've also included a couple of sets of broken red lines because unfortunately some of my colleagues have fallen out with each other. And I found it interesting yet sad to observe the way that their language use change since the time when they were best of friends to now when they have fallen out with each other. Also interesting is the fact that in my workplace, most of us are females, and a lot of us are not what you would call native Australians. And what's more interesting is that our course coordinator, which can be considered our boss, hence our superior, is the only white male native English speaker in the whole department. So naturally, our interactions with him take into account the gender, ethnicity, and social status. And the way we speak to him is very different as opposed to the way we speak to each other. Right. This next graphic, and I'll just move the camera again, represents my family network. It is also pretty dense because my family members live in different places all around the world. My eldest brother lives in Singapore, the second one lives in Indonesia, and the third one lives in the United States. So although we all speak English and we were educated here in Australia, the places where my brothers live actually affect the way that they use English when communicating with each member of the family. My mum and dad, they travel back and forth constantly between Australia and Singapore. And what's more, they are not as fluent as me or my brothers in English. So with them, there is a tendency to mix both English and Indonesian in our communication. Once again, I've included some thick lines and some thin lines to show the frequency of contact that I have with each member of my family. Okay, so this, again, moving here, sorry. Okay, this is pretty much a summary of all I've been talking about. So I'm going to mainly focus on my identity as an English teacher and as the youngest daughter from a Chinese Indonesian family. Status-wise, as a teacher, I am generally equal to my colleagues, but sometimes also considered inferior for reasons I'll explain in my written report. With my students, I am generally in a superior position. I keep in constant touch with them pretty much every day, either by WhatsApp, email, or face-to-face. And this has engendered some positive feelings, some negative feelings, depending on the colleague that I'm speaking to and whatever they've asked me to do. And here is pretty much a summary of the linguistic relationships that I have with them. For my family, I generally occupy an inferior position since I'm the youngest. I do keep in touch with everyone daily, but using WhatsApp, which creates a little bit of a distance. And although I have strong feelings of affection with my family, the fact that we are limited by WhatsApp communication has created a little bit of a distance in that I don't really talk about topics that I would talk with them had they been face-to-face with me. And the language that we use also tend to be a lot shorter and use a lot less pet names or baby talk when we use WhatsApp as opposed to when we talk face-to-face. But I've run out of time now for this presentation. I will upload this PowerPoint without the camera so that you can read everything on the screen. But I would appreciate any feedback or suggestions on my presentation, and you can post your thoughts on the discussion board or email me. And just very quickly, here is my list of references for this presentation. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope everyone will have a good week ahead. Thank you.